Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video we're going to learn the 1 to 4 player Suburbia, designed by Ted Alspach and published by Bezier Games, who helped sponsor this video. Here you're managing a small town, but have big dreams of parks, industries, bustling neighborhoods, and perhaps a bit of wealth. Can you turn your town into a booming metropolis? Only one way to find out. Join me at the table, and let's learn how to play. To set up, assemble this market board near the play area. It's double-sided, but this side is only used in a 5-player game, which requires a separate expansion, so we'll keep this side face up. Now find and sort the hexagon tiles labeled as A, B, or C on their backs, giving each separate group a good mix. As it shows here, this is the A space of the market board, and you now deal 7 A tiles face up into the market. Set each one beneath these marked areas for them on the market board so that it looks something like this when you're done. Then, as shown here, based on your number of players, you'll stack more A tiles face down onto this space. We'll pretend we have 2 players in this video, which means we set 7 A tiles here. On this space, you now stack an amount of B tiles face down, again, based on your number of players. So we would stack 12 in this 2-player game. On this space, again, we refer to the numbers showing underneath our number of players, and we start here at the bottom. So this means that we take 5 random C tiles, and this will make up the bottom of the stack we're creating. Then we find this one more round tile, and we mix it with 6 other C tiles. Once these are properly mixed together, we then set that on top of the stack. And finally, again, based on our number of players, this tells us that we take 6 more C tiles and set those on top as well. Then this entire stack we set into this space. All of the leftover A, B, and C tiles you return to the box, which means each time you play, you'll have a different mix of tiles to use. And I'll point out, if you have the 2nd edition printing of the game, it comes with trays to help you store and organize your tiles. The circle tiles are known as goals and have this back. Ensure they're mixed and then reveal 1 per player into these spaces, and the rest you'll keep nearby for use in a moment. Now create a supply of the money in its 3 different denominations, which can also be left in the included game tray if you like. Each player now collects one of these burrow boards, a player aid, 3 investment tokens, and the wooden pieces in their chosen color. They set their cylinder piece into the 0 space of this income track and their square piece onto the 1 space of this reputation track. Each player also collects $15 from the supply. Nearby, you'll also set out this population board, and on the value 2 space, each player sets their wooden population figure. Now, from the remaining goals we'd set aside earlier, deal 2 tiles to each of the players. They'll examine their goals secretly, picking one of them to keep, and the other they'll return along with all of the remaining goals back to the box. We'll discuss the goal tiles and why you may want to pick one over another a little later. The game also comes with 3 stacks of tiles labeled as suburbs, community parks, and heavy factories. Unlike the tiles we saw earlier, these don't have an A, B, or C on their backs. Each player sets a suburb tile into this center space of their burrow with a community park above it, and then a heavy factory. Now, over the course of the game, you'll be adding more and more tiles to this area, and your burrow is double-sided, which means that you can flip it over and then build out in this direction instead if you'd prefer. But just make sure the tiles are again arranged exactly as before, with the suburbs closest to your board and the heavy factory furthest away. Now stack 4 more of each of these basic tiles near the market board, returning any extras back to the box. Finally, pick someone to be the start player and give them this start player marker. And that's the setup. In Suburbia, you and the other players will be acquiring tiles to expand your growing cities. Each addition you make may influence your income, reputation, and population of people who move into your area. Build the city that draws the greatest population to it by the end of the game, and you win. The game is played over several turns, starting with the first player and going clockwise around and around the table. And on your turn, you'll perform 4 steps, beginning with placing 1 building or 1 investment marker. And there are 4 different ways you can do this, but you must pick just one. So let's start with the option known as taking a tile from the real estate market. Here you collect any one of the tiles in this face-up row by paying its cost. A tile's cost is shown in this area along with any shown on the market board above it. So if I wanted to take this homeowners association tile, the total cost would be 6 plus 4, which is $10. Anytime you need to pay for something, you return that money from in front of you back to the supply. If you can't afford to pay the cost of a tile, you can't take it. Once you've collected a tile, add it to your city so that at least one of its sides is adjacent to one side of another tile already in your city. Over the course of the game, as you gain more tiles, your city might look something like this, and it really can grow in any direction you like, even going around your borough board. You just can't place a tile on top of your board or on top of any other tile you already have in play. After adding a new tile to your city, it will likely have some effects that need to be resolved. It may even trigger effects on other tiles already in play. We're not going to go through every tile effect in this game, but I'll go through several examples so you should be able to interpret the various effects when you come across them. As soon as you add a new tile to your city, check this area. A symbol here is an immediate effect, and this is the symbol for your population value. When you see this with a gray background, it represents how much your population grows by. Anytime you gain population, you advance your marker on this separate population board. There are no tiles in this set that directly reduce your population, but in expansions you can pick up separately. A population figure with a value shown on a red background reduces your population. A tile showing a circle and a positive value represents an increase in your income, while a circle with a red frame is a decrease in your income. Adjust your income by moving your marker here up or down. Your income value can never exceed 15 or go below -5, so any effect that would push you beyond either of those extremes is just ignored. A value in a square box represents either a positive or negative change in your reputation. When resolving this, adjust your reputation value here up or down as necessary, and like income, you ignore any adjustments that would try to move your marker beyond the ends of the track. After resolving any immediate effect on the tile you've placed, resolve any effect in its bottom area here. This is its conditional effect, because how it resolves depends on the condition of your city and maybe even the cities of the other players. Before we learn about conditional effects, I should point out that every tile is from one of 5 main categories represented by the symbol found in this area of it. You have the green residential tiles, yellow industrial tiles, blue commercial tiles, and gray civic tiles. Lakes are also their own category, and they show this symbol. Some tiles also have another symbol showing on their right side, which indicates a subcategory they might belong to. Restaurants, airports, offices, schools, skyscrapers, or car dealerships. You don't have to memorize these various symbol names, just knowing they exist will help you understand the various conditional effects. For example, this one gives us $2 for every residential tile, which includes this one since it also has the residential symbol here. If we look at our city, this means we get $2 for each of these 2 tiles, but that's not all. The effect says we gain $2 for every residential tile. This includes any found in any player's city. So we'd also get $2 for this residential tile in our opponent's city. That means we'd actually collect a total of $2, $4, $6 from the supply. Now, after resolving the conditional effect of the tile you just placed, you also check the conditional effects of any adjacent tiles. For example, this heavy factory says that you lose 1 reputation for each civic or residential adjacent tile, like the one we just placed. On the other hand, this community park says that we go up 1 reputation for each adjacent industrial, residential, or commercial tile. So again, this is a residential tile, so we'd go up 1 reputation. Now, the effects of adjacent tiles all resolve at once, meaning this +1 and -1 cancel each other out, so we don't end up adjusting our reputation in this case. After resolving the tile you placed and any tiles directly adjacent to it, also resolve any tiles that might be affected that aren't adjacent. For example, let's say we had this tile in play from a previous turn, and then we added the homeowners association. This school isn't adjacent to the newly placed tile, but it says that we gain 1 population for each of our residential tiles. Every conditional effect is always active, so when you place new tiles, check to see if any older ones are triggered, giving you their bonus as well. So that means this effect here would trigger since we just added a new residential tile, and that would increase our population by 1. In the same way, when a new residential tile gets added by you or another player, you'll earn $2 because of this tile's effect, and your population will go up by 1 as well, assuming that this tile gets added to your city, because the effect here says that you gain 1 population for each of your residential symbols. You'll want to pay attention to the wording on the tiles. If a tile says that you resolve its effect every time something is added, that means in any player's city, yours or even another player's. If its effect refers to each of your tiles, then it only triggers based on tiles added to your own city. If an effect triggers based on tiles added to all other boroughs, that means it ignores tiles placed in your own city and only pays attention to the other player's boroughs. Now, I should mention, the game refers to the tiles in front of you as both your city and your borough, but they both mean the same thing, so you can use those terms interchangeably. When you're first learning to play, you may find it helpful to follow the steps on this side of your player aid, which will take you through each of the tiles to check when new ones are added to your city. Let me show you one more example of how to resolve some tile effects just to make sure it's clear. I've removed the borough boards from these 2 cities just to save some space, but let's say it's later in the game and we have these 2 separate cities, and the player here pays for and adds this fancy restaurant to theirs. First, we resolve the immediate effect here, which increases their income by 3. We then check its conditional effect, and this says that the player's income will drop by 1 for every restaurant built by any player after this one. So that doesn't change anything for now. Next, we look at the adjacent tiles. This office building says we now increase our income by 1 since a new commercial building was just placed adjacent to it. Likewise, your community park increases your reputation by 1 since you just put a commercial tile adjacent to it. We also have a farm here that says our income goes up by 1 for every restaurant tile, which is the type of tile we just added, so we'd increase our income as well. Now we check our opponent. They have this slaughterhouse that gives them 1 income for every restaurant, which would include this one, so they gain that income now. None of their other tiles are affected by this restaurant, but on a future turn, if our opponent built this fast food restaurant in their city, in addition to all the immediate and conditional effects they'd normally resolve, this effect on our fancy restaurant also resolves, reducing our income by 1, since the fast food tile is a restaurant that was placed after this tile was put into play. As I mentioned, we're not going to go over every tile effect, but the game comes with this handy guide discussing them in detail if you have any questions while playing. With that understood, let's go back to resolving a turn. We know that in the first step of your turn, you have 4 options to pick from, and one option is to buy a tile from the real estate market, but instead, you can take a basic tile. So let's see how that works. These sit in their own stacks near the market and just cost the price showing on their left side. After you pay for one of these, you then place it into your city and resolve it just like any other tile. And the supply of these basic tiles is limited, so when they run out, you won't be able to buy more of them. That said, after buying a basic tile, you must pick one tile from the market, pay just the cost showing above it, and then discard it. These tiles here have no cost showing above them, so they could be removed for free, but you may want to pay to remove one of the other tiles instead to prevent another player from being able to buy it later if you think it would really help their city. So, in the first step of a turn, you can either buy a tile from the market or buy a basic tile, or instead take a tile as a lake. To do this, collect any one tile from the market and pay only the cost showing above it, not the cost on the tile itself. Then flip that tile over to its lake side and add it to your city following the normal rules. Lakes immediately pay you $2 for each adjacent industrial, civic, residential, and commercial tile, which means it will also pay you $2 more each time you add another of those types of tiles adjacent to it later. The final way you can instead perform the first step of your turn is by placing an investment marker. You start the game with 3 investment markers, and with this action, you pick any one of your tiles that doesn't already have an investment marker on it, pay the cost showing on it here, and then you set the investment marker in its top left corner. This will double the conditional effect of the tile it's placed on.
So to place one on a lake is actually free because it has no base cost. And now instead of getting $2 for every one of these adjacent tiles, we get 4. Now since we already collected the $2 for each of these, we would now just collect the 2 extra we're owed for each of them. So that means we would gain 2, 4, 6 more dollars. If we were to add another of these tiles adjacent to this one later, because this effect is doubled, we'd now gain $4 for this. An investment marker not only doubles the conditional effect of the tile it's placed on, but also its immediate effect. So we'd have to reduce our income by another 1 after placing this marker on the community park. However, a marker does not impact any of the effects printed on the tiles adjacent to it, meaning it wouldn't, for example, cause this adjacent effect to trigger again. After you've placed and resolved your investment marker, you then have to discard any one tile from the real estate market, again, only paying the cost shown above it.
In this way, no matter which of the 4 options you pick for the first step of your turn, whether you take a market tile or a basic tile, or take and turn a tile into a lake, or place an investment marker, one tile will always end up removed from the market itself. After the first step of your turn, as it shows here on the other side of your player aid, you perform step 2, which tells you to collect money based on your current income.
Just check your marker here. If the value is positive, take that amount of money from the supply, so $4 in this case. If the amount is negative, then you have to pay that amount of money back to the supply. If you don't have enough money to pay what you owe, let's say that you owed -$4, but you only had 1. You'd pay what you have and then subtract the rest from your current population score.
As the third step of your turn, you adjust your population based on your current reputation.
Just check your marker on this track, and if the value is positive, increase your population by that amount. On the other hand, if the value is negative, reduce your population by that value. And if you don't have enough population to remove what you owe, you lose what remains from your money, ignoring any extra that you owe if you run out. Now I should mention, if while gaining population you ever cross one of these red lines, you reduce both your income and reputation by 1 for each red line you cross. This represents losing some of your small town charm as your city grows, and the added challenges of managing a growing city. Likewise, if your population ever goes backwards over a red line, you increase your income and reputation by 1.
As we know, when you place a tile, you may have several effects to resolve, but you always resolve the effect of crossing a red line on the population track as soon as it occurs, even if you still have other effects to resolve afterwards. After adjusting your population, you go to the 4th step of your turn, adding a new tile to the market.
To do this, first slide any tiles as necessary to the right to fill in the gap. Then draw a new tile from the A stack and set it face up into this open space on the far left. As turns continue, eventually all the tiles in the A stack will be gone, and then you'll draw tiles from the B stack, and once that's empty, you'll take from the C stack.
Either way, after the market is refilled, the next player in turn order takes their turn. And turns will continue like this until you would draw this one more round tile from the C stack.
Instead of adding it to the market, remove it from the game and then draw a new tile to replace it.
With this one more round tile drawn, you now finish the current round. That is, you only take as many more turns as necessary to get back to the person holding the start player marker. So if during this player's turn, this tile was drawn, this player would get another turn, and then we'd be back to this player. On the other hand, if this was drawn during this player's turn, then after their turn, it would already be back to this player. Either way, when it gets back to this player, now this player and every other player at the table takes one more turn, and then the game ends. In this way, everyone will have taken the same number of turns. Then it's time for final scoring.
First, go through each of the public goals on the board here and award its population points in this area to the one player who achieved that goal. For example, the player who has the fewest industrial tiles will earn 15 population points. Now, if players are tied on a goal, no one gains its reward. I should also point out that you ignore any red lines that you cross over while earning population points from goal tokens you've achieved. With the public goals resolved, each player now turns over their own private goal they received during the setup. If a player has achieved their goal without tying another player, they gain its related population. Now, unlike the public goals, only the player who has a private goal can gain its points. If they fail to achieve it, then no one gets those population points. If you're curious about the variety of goals that come in the game, you'll find them detailed here in the included appendix, along with a reminder of the goal resolution rules. With all the goals checked and resolved, each player now spends every $5 they have for 1 point of population, again, ignoring any red lines they might cross in this case. So if we assume this is the purple player's leftover money, they would spend each of these $5 to go up twice in the population track, keeping their leftover $3 unspent. Now, the player with the highest population wins. In the case of a tie, the tied player with the highest reputation wins. If there's still a tie, the tied player with the highest income wins, and if there's still a tie, the tied player with the most remaining money wins. And if there's still a tie, the tied players hold a rematch to break the tie. The game also comes with solo rules covered on this page of the rulebook, but these I'll leave for you to discover on your own. And if you want even more Suburbia, there's a separate expansion you can pick up that allows you to add a 5th player and also provides you with even more tiles and ways to play. But otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play Suburbia. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.